Yo, what is up, America and the world and the universe? It's House Divided, Orange Bloods Live, or otherwise known as Two Men in Red. I'm Jeff Ketchum. That's Chad Hastings. We're also both just drinking beverages, too. So I don't think they're spiked yet.
No,
although
not mine.
I may or may not have partaken in a little rogue shop moments before jumping on the old restream feed, because that's how we roll. Like, comment, subscribe to the page, especially the night after the Cowboys go offensive line when you wanted them to go sexy. You wanted they went Sunday suit and you wanted them to go Friday night out. And anyway, we'll get to that. We'll talk about the draft. We are leading off with the portal. Did I say like, comment, subscribe? We are over 25,000 subscribers to the channel. Thank you for that. And jump into the Specs chat. We see you, Money B. We see you, Jareth. We see you, Text Guy 2. Thank you, as always, for jumping in and contributing. It is the last day of the portal. Not the last day that guys can sign, make decisions, all of that stuff. It won't even be the last day that we hear about guys that have entered the portal, because today is the last day they can officially insert their names into the portal. And then over the course of the next 48 hours, we will hear a smattering of names, presumably, that entered the portal late, enter the fray. But so far, Chad, nothing that's made me go, uh-oh, here we go. Texas is in business. And I think that's kind of what they're waiting on. You know, Anwar Richardson had an interesting note in the war room on Orange Bloods last night. By the way, go check that out if you haven't seen it. I thought it was a really good war room. Not the best of all time. I'm not telling you it's going to win a Pulitzer Prize or anything, but considering spring football is getting ready to wrap up this weekend, it's funny. There's like no spring game talk. So tomorrow's the last practice, but there's almost no focus on that necessarily per se, but lots of stuff in there, Chad. But the note on the portal, which is essentially they feel like they've answered their needs. Mm-hmm. Now, will somebody pop into the portal almost anywhere that, you know, feels like an impact player somewhere? They lose Michael Kern to the portal yesterday. So now they're sitting at 83. So they have room to add two more at some point going to August if no one else enters the portal. And so there's very much, I think, a wait and see what happens from here. I think there are guys that haven't made decisions that they've kicked the tires on that are already in the portal. I think the kickoff return guy from BYU is a perfect example, Keelan Marion, that if nothing else happens, they may look around the room and go, what do we think? Is that what we want to do? But I think they are very much in the let's kind of wait and see what we have in front of us. No real need to make a rash decision. And we wait. We wait to see if anybody else enters the portal that anything remotely comes to close to being an impactful kind of a guy. And if not, they'll probably look for a couple of contributors, and that'll be that.
All right, Catch, last day of the portal. Portal day 10. That means we got 2 red shirts and we need 2 Portal Combat intros. Your choice, Willie Nelson or Portal Combat first?
Oh, hey, give me Willie.
Willie first. Here we go. Get over here! Oh, sweet. So sweet. All right. If you prefer the more intense version, here's the one with this may be the only time in your life you're going to see Nico and Bert Auburn together. Pay attention. Yeah, double get over here. Yeah, Catch, it's in reading through the notes in the war room. Yep. Go ahead. Oh, you look, you were about to say something. In looking at those notes in terms of the timing of everything, that's why I asked you yesterday about, do you think they're comfortable where they are? Do you think they're set? But I think we're now to that point where that Sark mentioned at the beginning of the portal, where it is free agency, but it's not like the NFL. You don't know at the beginning all the time. And even if we understand it's modern times, it's not like it's a total mystery to all these teams. But I'm sure there does get to a point where you're like you just said, dudes are there, but is that what we want to do? Is that what we like? And so it's going to be, it's going to be wild to watch the end just to see like, okay, is there one where they feel like they could be extra Texas at the end? Ohio State and Georgia, I'm sure, be thinking the same thing. Hey, can we give them one last splash at the end and really make something happen here? Maybe it is the kick returner you're talking about.
Yeah, I think there are areas all over the team that could still use something. And I thought it was interesting that Anwar's sourcing conceded, hey, man, if we can find an offensive lineman inside that will help, yeah. And It doesn't look like they're necessarily – I have to fall on the sword a little bit in that I really thought this would have a little bit more bang for your buck. I really thought the lessons that we've learned, that we would see more names enter the spring. I think what we've learned instead as a byproduct of what's actually unfolded is we know there's a lot of money in the market, and it just looks like guys got taken care of. And if Texas took care of all of its retention in January in a way that the guys that they've lost so far, the sprinkling of players, it's not NIL related. So, Texas hasn't lost any. And I think we've seen that by and large around the country that whatever guys have, whatever programs have in terms of their best players, the overwhelming majority, there's been no Jordan Addison. There's not, oh my God, an All-American just hopped in. It's Nico. The fact that we've even talked about Nico being probably arguably the best player in the portal when the day he entered, we were talking about, is he even good?
Yeah. And then last night, Catch, when Walter Nolan got drafted, I will always think of him as one of the big names of that portal, that big, gigantic portal that we've talked about from the, last year's full cycle. And Nolan, Evan Stewart, and some other guys obviously Bond and some other guys jump in, but Nolan got drafted last night where he did. And I thought, yep, that was one of those dudes in that portal. That kind of talent went into that portal. But to be fair, that wasn't a spring portal, right? That was the winter time. That was end of season. He had a coaching change situation and he jumped in. We certainly haven't seen anything like that in a spring portal yet.
No, and I thought it was interesting. I think there were about a half dozen guys that went in the first round last night that were former portal guys. Cam Ward, Travis Hunter. Mm-hmm. Unique situations there. Obviously, the Travis Hunter deal, his entire career, a bit unorthodox. But you mentioned Walter Nolan, obviously Matthew Golden, Derek Harmon, the big defensive tackle, was a guy that went through the portal, and Jackson Dart, which
right, that's true.
That was one of the real memorable moments. And I'm not one of these people that enjoys draft disappointment porn. You know what I mean? It's like there are people who are like, who's going to fall in the draft? Are they going to have a camera on them? I love to watch the shame and the sadness and the disappointment. And oh man, first time I saw Thurman Thomas look as unhappy as he did. Oh, I love that every year. Like, that's not me. I didn't every time they peeked into the Sanders watch party, man, I got nothing against Shedeur Sanders. I hope that guy has a good life and a good career. And like, why would I wish anything bad on that guy? But when the trade is made to move, when the trade to move up is made, and it's like, okay, this has to be for a quarterback,
right? And then they're showing you both watch parties, man. That was it, and that's a point, Catch, where if I'm Sanders, I would have gone with that couch shot, the initial empty couch shot. I'd have done empty couch all night until they pick me, until somebody picks me. And then I'll sit down and talk to you, but I would not have given people the satisfaction that they ended up getting.
No, it's,
him over smiling is probably getting broken down in a way that's not fair to him. So I'd have left it at the empty couch all night.
Dude, it sucks. Like I've been to watch parties. When I was in television for about 5 years at KI back from 95 to 99, it felt like, there was always a football, basketball, certainly the baseball. I think I went to a baseball draft party once and it was just the worst thing ever. Like it was multiple days. Guy thought he was going to go early. They thought he was going to go pretty soon on day 2 back in the day. And he just didn't get drafted. And this was a guy that at one point was, anyway, I won't even get into it, but like I've been at a draft party where there's like at one point you have to turn and talk to your camera guy or the reporter you're with, and you just kind of go, hey man, do we need to go?
Right.
Like this
do we not need to be a part of this anymore? And
like they don't want us here. They don't want to ask us to leave, but this is now uncomfortable. Like I've been there, I've done it. It sucks. And so I felt bad for I feel bad for any of those guys. I always kind of ache a little bit for the guy who's still there on day 2, who comes back for more pain. It's like, I'm back in the green room. And it's like, dude, I'm sorry.
But then catch, there are people like these in the chat. Colby says, when it comes to Sanders, I love it, with the laughing emojis. And Oscar, our guy on the 40, says, I do love the shame and disappointment for Sanders. Sue me, I don't care. Some people, Oscar, you're not alone. We do concoct hatred in sports for the weirdest reasons. And I guess people just hate Sanders because he's Deion's kid or whatever it is. But
it gives me the ick because I know we don't treat like actual bad guys.
I know
that, like, if he was an actual hardened criminal.
Yeah, no, I heard a lot of that discussion today too. I think it's totally fair. We'll see how fast he comes off the board tonight.
And I'm not saying I would want to hang out with Shedeur. I don't know him. And you read some of the stuff and it's like, maybe he wouldn't be my kind of people, just kind of based on some of the stuff. But I don't know that. And like, I definitely can't go from maybe we're different types of styles of people to, well, I hope that guy has a fucking miserable worst night of his life. Like that's hardcore.
Yeah, that is tough. By the way, thank you to Mitchell and
because I don't know that people are thinking about it quite in that context. So if you're thinking like, hey man, don't sue me or anything, but I really enjoyed that. And it's like, okay, but you realize right now he's 21, 22 years old. That is one of his top 3 worst nights of his life. That wouldn't include somebody dying or something really severe like that. He'll remember that with non-joy until the day he dies. And I just think it's like watching somebody in the championship game in the Final Four go 1 for 18 and going, that was kind of fun to watch that just unravel. And it's like, really?
Hey, people like it. People like it. I always say, if I could guarantee you that you're going to see an incredible like 25 car crash or a train hit a house or whatever, would you go watch? Most people would say yes.
Hey man, people watch Evel Knievel because they thought that dude was going to die at some point.
Yeah, half of them want him to hit it, and half of them don't want him to. So we'll definitely get into some draft stuff. There was a chat in here, Catch, in terms of Texas and the portal. I wanted to get your thoughts on. I was going to ask you about it anyway, so let's get it out of the way now because it kind of leads us to one of these positions. Thank you, Jay Wags 25. Does Niblett getting moved back to receiver feel like they don't think there are any other wide receivers in the portal that they like? That was something in the war room that jumped out to me. I guess I hadn't realized that the move was made, but I saw a note in there that indeed Niblett now has been moved back to wide receiver, I'm assuming, on offense.
Yeah, very late in, I think we reported that on Tuesday. So it's last 20%, last fifth of camp. This would be something that's occurred. I think we've had this conversation. I almost feel like I don't want to get in on a Friday where I start nitpicking and sound like an old man and being the old guy from the Muppets. I can't remember which one I am. Am I Statler? Maybe. He should have stayed on offense the entire time. It never made sense. There was always a ton of depth in the secondary that it didn't seem natural, where you were like, oh, he's moving the quarterback. Gotcha. Totally makes sense. I mean, he wants to get on the field as soon as possible. It's a good Jay Wags, 25. I don't know why that makes me laugh to say your name in totality, but it did. I think it is like the big J and the W and the big W followed with little A and the little S. It's
well, that's the thing. You heard me having a little trouble figuring out what it was at first. I was going to go with J Wag, and then I was like, oh, it's Wags. I get Wags. J Wags 25. The letters, you got to understand.
No, it's a bit throws you off a little bit the first time you look. I thought and I wondered, is it JW Ags 25?
Right. It could be that. You got to understand, JW. Ketch and I come from an era before all the musicians started doing a lot of lowercase letters or all cap letters. Or we come from a different era where capitalization was a little more tame. Now there's just madness. So we gotta catch up.
I mean, if he's not an Aggie, he should clarify that. And if he is, I think he'd want us to know, like, yeah, dumbasses, JW.
Yeah.
My name is Justin Washington, and I'm an Ag in class of 2025. Okay.
Yeah, see, and I'm taking that as, and I've worked with somebody that was a Wagner. I'm taking that as somebody that's probably named Wagner, and they go by Wags. So it's J Wags. That's what I would.
No, I think it is J Wags, but because I do a show with a literal Aggie, and the show's called House Divided, and there is maroon in the logo, it feels like I at least need to clarify. And what's the stadium in the background on the avatar? That is DKR.
That looks like DKR.
Yeah. Okay, so it's probably J Wags.
Probably a J Wags.
Okay.
Yes. And we've probably broken down the name
I was going to say
a little too much.
We digress.
We have now digressed into the weeds. But Niblett is back on offense. And for you, in terms of you've talked about how much you dig the Mosley move, and you've looked into Emmett Mosley more and more. You like it more and more. From the reading the war room, sounds like the coaches like it more and more. The more they think about what they've done.
I mean, I think they feel like they have a starter that maybe isn't 1,000-yard guy, but might be 1,000-yard guy. I think they think he's going to be a big producer.
Okay. Gotcha. And then the next question, of course, would be then, is that enough? With what they think they've got coming back with those injuries, the minor injuries, are they good? Are they good? Unless, they'll tell us, hey, look, if a stud shows up Friday, Saturday, Sunday in the portal, that's different, but we feel really good. We feel like we can go chase a natty with these guys.
I think the thing that when I think about the Niblett move back, I don't know that he would preclude them from taking another. He's a guy they gave up on at receiver. If we're being completely honest, they knew they were going in with 8 this spring and got down to 6, and they weren't urgent to be like, well, Niblett is so close to being a really good receiver. Why would we? That just, to make that move just was screaming at us that they don't view him as a receiver, really. Not anybody they're going to count on.
Right.
But if I think about right now how I would personally use Ryan Niblett, he's definitely on special teams as a return guy. Otherwise, there's no reason to even have him in the program. So I feel like I'm probably thinking about him on special teams first and foremost, and maybe that's where the Keelan Marion conversation comes into play. Is Jonah Williams going to return kicks? Who do they think are going to return kicks? So do you use a scholarship on a guy who's an All-America as a kick returner? So I think they're thinking about it. I think they've kicked the tires on that thought. They've called him. They've been in communication, but they haven't offered. But it seems pretty clear that when he lists in interview space, when I see updates, that the schools that he's visiting are listed, the schools that have offered are listed. And then there's also, and Texas is also in the mix. And so it's okay, you can tell there's at least some level of footsie that's been played because that keeps getting said. And he doesn't necessarily need to throw Texas in there. He's got offers. And I think it may come down to that. I wonder if, because I just can't imagine that Niblett moving back to offense after the decision that they made. It does give them a 10th wide receiver, but I don't know that mentally they're like, okay, now we're good, because the guy that they gave up on at wide receiver, that wasn't what he cross-trained this spring.
Right.
He moved at a position that Sarkisian said we're light with numbers. They deliberately moved a guy from the position light on numbers to defense. It didn't work out. They're moving him back to offense. I would say we all need to be very cautious about what we would expect from Ryan Niblett, but there's some scuttlebutt that they would like to use him in a Keelan Robinson role potentially.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge bonus thing for me. That's why I asked you the question with only Mosley's name in the question.
Well,
to me,
he's the only guy they have with a style-wise that I think could play a Keelan Robinson role based on what they have right now.
Right.
It's the fact that they don't really have anybody for the Keelan Robinson role is one of the reasons why I've thought it's a Keelan Robinson kind of oomph that they lack at running back. So, but the thing is, they didn't trust Niblett enough on offense to be in that role and keep them there that spring.
Right. Yeah.
So I just don't know that what it really means. I love Niblett's raw talent, and I loved it more than anybody coming out of high school. So
raw talent at receiver or running back? Or as a all-purpose weapon?
Kind of as an all-purpose weapon that you hope would develop into a wide receiver. Very Deshaun Hales-ish.
Okay.
And it's kind of gone that way, although Deshaun Hale's contributing a little bit more than Ryan Niblett. But, I mean, Ryan Niblett's still a young guy. It just, I think sometimes in high school you can have a guy that's so electric. And there really is a tweener. There's not a ton of these guys, but there is a running back wide receiver tweener where – in high school, the guy's just incredible, but it is as this weapon at the high school level that nobody at that level can match up with. And they get to college and somehow they get caught in between a couple of different things. Sometimes you see it as a guy who's a quarterback trying to make that move, and it is strange. And there are a few guys that I think I've fallen for the okie doke with that, you think, oh my God, that guy is incredibly explosive. And the question of, do you know exactly what position he's going to play is? And it's like, no, but with some coaching, you can turn him into a wide receiver. And I think that didn't quite happen with Niblett. And it's got to be one of those things that in the future, Chad, the next time anybody with Ryan Niblett's profile pops up and the conversation is, well, he needs to improve his route running. He's raw and he needs some coaching and it might take a couple of years. It is completely fair for you. And I need this now as a troubleshoot.
Mm-hmm.
Feel free to say, so is this one of these Ryan Niblett situations?
Okay.
At which point I'll either go, oh my God, it is, or I'll offer up a little bit of a nuance that makes it different so that mentally you don't have to go, this is one of these Ryan Niblett situations and we may be asking a leopard to change its spots.
We will install a Ryan Niblett alarm on the show. That will be installed very soon, and we will turn.
But you know what it looks like when that guy hits? Ted Ginn Jr.
Yeah, Percy Harvin.
Yeah. Yes. Right.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, Catch, why do you fall in love with those guys? And it's like, because they're the Moby Dicks of the universe. When they hit,
yeah,
it's having a nuclear weapon to play with.
Yeah, it's the dopamine hit. Why do you eat a donut if you know it's not great for you?
It's Reggie Bush, I guess, is ultimately the all-time great one.
There you go. There, yeah. Then think of the feeling it gave. Even if you didn't, up until the game with Texas, where I wasn't rooting for him.
I was just in awe.
When you watch that dude play, it was just like, oh my God, what are we watching? By the way, Catch, let's get a clarification. This is how you know, and this is how you know. Not an Aggie, LOL. It is for Wagner. So in case you needed to know, he let you know.
No, we figured it out, but you do understand why we would ask.
Right. And he gave you the spelling just in case you.
Listen, isn't there a media guy that goes by Wags that's an Aggie? Or do I have, I don't know.
Everything but the Aggie part.
There is a media guy that goes by Wags.
Well, if you're talking about the same one, I worked with a guy. I worked with Adam Wagner is his name, and he goes by Wags. But he's not an Aggie.
Okay.
Yeah. And this Wag says, my dad and I went to the Kentucky game last year. It was my first game in person. That's where the DKR picture came from. There you go.
Hey, man. Thank you.
Cool. Welcome in, Wags. I think I've seen that name before. So, J Wags 25. We
both thought it was Wags, but I just doubted myself for a second because I noticed, you can't spell Wags without Ags.
Yeah, you just got to know that when Catch's OCD and my OCD join forces, whoo, man, we get in the weeds.
New to the show, are we?
Yeah, exactly. That's right. It's your first show today, huh? All right. By the way, speaking of this show, Each and Every Day Texas Card House is the sponsor of this show, and they also bring you this Hijack Poker. That's right. You can feel like that cowboy silhouette with a bag of money. Hijackpoker.com. Get that app, put it on any device you want. And remember, you got to do it in the state of Texas. Got to be in the state of Texas to play. Hijackpoker.com. You could end up at a virtual table right next to Jeff Ketchum. It has happened to people. Catch, are you in a game right now?
No, I was just thinking that. Like, I didn't get in. I haven't been in a game the last couple of days. It's just... Okay. Because here's the thing. I don't like to get into the tournament. You need to have a couple I like to play tournaments. First of all, those are my games. I'm a tournament player. It is 1,000% my preference. I'll play cash games, and I do okay on them, but I feel like I'm a tournament player. And I don't like to get into tournament play knowing that I'm going to have to bail. And some people do, and then they'll play, and then once they have like 5 minutes to go, they'll just start doing crazy stuff at the table. They're all in. They'll just keep trying to double up until somebody takes them out. And I hate that. So I haven't played, but like as soon as the hijack started, you started literally the word hijack came out of your mouth. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, the nooner, the noon tournament. And then it occurred to me, well, I'm 30 minutes late.
Yeah.
It would cost me $10.
No, I heard you Scooby do it. I said Hij, and you went,
I did.
Yeah, you were pumped.
And I'm not saying that I won't join the tournament, but it's been in my head.
Here's a super chat. We tell you they always go to the front. Check this out. J.S. Hookham, who we will assume is a Longhorn as well. $9.99 super chat. Hey, what up, fellas? Do you think not having a spring game helped Sark in the portal to not worry about making a game? Great show. Much respect, Chad. I know we give you a lot of caca, but we love you. Thank you, J.S. Hookham. And also nice usage of caca. Always been a big fan of that one. If we're going to do alternative things for names for that, I've always been a big fan of the caca. Like that. All right, Catch. So did not having a spring game help Sark in the portal? Because he wasn't having to prep for the game. You like that?
No, Here's the thing. Do you want me to just answer your question, or do you want me to say the thing that got me to laugh?
Well, most of the time,
Chad,
always know that I want you to say the thing that made you laugh. And then
careful. Okay, look.
I know it's gonna take us somewhere, but go ahead.
Well, he spelled the word butt with 2 T's, like a person's butt.
Yeah, I did enjoy that too. Nice work.
And he said it next to the word caca. So presumably it wasn't an accident that he spelled it butt. But then I started thinking
it was a ma.
Well, no, hold that.
Okay, hold on.
And then I was like, well, our posters are always trying to make an Aggie joke out of that. And so Is he saying butt like a sheep's butt because an Aggie likes to have sex with a sheep in the butt?
I think you were.
I said, Chad, what did I say?
I know.
Chad, careful. I don't have to say the thing that I just thought.
Ultimately, we should have gone the other way. We should have gone to the question. What you just did does not deserve a nah. It does not deserve that.
I told you to hold it.
You were right to tell me to hold it. That does not deserve a dad joke. Nah. Because you basically tried to create a dad joke where one did not exist there.
Well, that's why I laughed, because it was so stupid.
J.S. Hookham. First off, the fact that J.S. Hookham was trying to give me respect, much respect, Chad, was in the sentence. There was no mention of livestock. There was no mention of sheep. All it was a nice, innocent little cock-off, as you point out, followed by a double T butt joke, and you took it too far.
There's always a sheep joke, though.
See, but why does there always have to be? Now the chat's going to spend an hour telling us why, but I didn't see it here, is what I'm saying.
No, and I agree. Okay. I'm saying I chuckled at what I came up with in an effort to sniff out whatever Aggie joke I was looking for. I was going to keep that to myself, but then you were like, oh, you think I don't even know what the hell else we were talking about. But you were like, oh, and I was like, no, my little laugh there, my reaction was to something completely different. And I wasn't going to say anything, but you've acknowledged it now. And
I get it. The voice in your head was like, okay, Chad's trying to ask a professional question, but sheep joke.
And I did go out of my way to I could have just actually, Chad, and given you an answer, but there was a part of me that was like, you know what? Dangle the bait.
Yep.
Dangle it and see if he takes it. And then once you took it, I was like, are you sure? And
yeah, that was good. Hey, you know what?
I know there are people in the chat that like a good Aggie sheep joke.
Well, there's a limb. Welcome to a limb. Really? You think so?
No, I'm not even trying to climb on a limb. I'm acknowledging the elephant in the room and saying that there's at least a decent sized percentage of people that enjoyed that for the Aggie cracking of it all is all.
Catch, there's a huge percentage of our crowd that want you to answer everything I ask you with a sheep joke. Everything. Hey, what do you think of the Cowboys draft? Every time. They want all of it. They want it every time. J.S. Hookham, thank you for the $9.99 super chat.
I may steal that, by the way.
I don't know. Now, let's see if we can try to seriously answer the question. Do you think not having a spring game?
No, I don't.
Help Sark in the portal?
I don't. Interesting question, JS. I honestly, nobody's even given 2 second thoughts about the spring game. If I'm being completely honest.
2 shakes of a lamb's tail. I'm sorry.
Very, that was actually very well done.
I thought that's where you were actually going to go.
So well done that I don't even need to laugh at it. I just like chef's kiss good.
Now that is a great condescending way to deal with a joke. Your joke's so great, I won't even laugh. Oh, thanks.
Well, no, I'm trying to move on from the road we went down. Like I'm trying to pull us out. Yeah. I'm trying to get back on the main road.
I'm going to drink
literally
water.
Just said, let's see if we can answer the question. I'm sorry.
I know. Ken. I did. I'll drink water. You be a pro.
Words I've never heard you say. So no, I don't think so. Actually, I think having a plan helps Sark. I think having a real understanding of what he has on the team. I think the one thing that this spring has really allowed for them is they got a chance to see their defensive tackles. They got to see their wide receivers, whatever they're doing with their offensive line. They've seen it. And they're making decisions off of that. And they've had enough. They did set this thing up. They're still active in the spring. So I don't know. I think that I think they've executed a well thought out plan so far.
I think you're right. 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 I
And I don't think the spring game has been, I don't think it's precluded them from anything. Because I can just tell you this, it's not a conversation that I'm having in my head. And I overthink everything. Matter of fact, kudos to you for coming up with a scenario of what may or may not be impacting Texas's ability to acquire talent that I hadn't really given a lot of thought and consideration to. But nobody's just really talked about it. Largely because the spring game is like it's just a dog and pony show. And they go out of their way to actually do less in that environment than they would in a normal practice. A lot of times there's thought processes of going out of their way to create a situation where one player doesn't outshine another. They don't want to exit a competition with the public getting crazy ideas in their head about something that may or may not exist. Think Casey Thompson a few years ago, where it was like, the spring game, or no, it was Malik. Malik had a good spring game. And then people were just all of a sudden like, he might be better than Quinn right now. And it was like, well, guys, and it might be, and there were people who were like, that means he might stay ahead of Arch forever. And it was like, well, no, like there's a thing that's going on there. It's just calm down sometimes with regards to spring game performances. I'll give you another one. In 2010, I sat down next to that man right there at DKR. We were sitting on the west side of the stadium. And Garrett Gilbert threw a laser down the seam. It was like his third or fourth touchdown pass of the spring game. And I turned to Chad and I said, that right there is why I think he'll be better than Colt McCoy this year. Hey, McFly, hello. So sometimes you got to speak to yourself, baby. And like, that's me. I've done it. I've been there. I have a literal all-time memorable, yep, I said that during a spring game moment that I'll never forget. And I do a show with a guy right now that I literally said it in front of. So in the event that if I ever did forget it and I ever tried to do some Garrett Gilbert denial stuff, like, oh, I wasn't that crazy for Garrett Gilbert. Chad can always say, really? Because I remember we were on metal benches and in the shade, and that happened. And you said this thing that I questioned, and you were defiant about it. And I would be, oh, no, that just never happened. Yeah. So
we do have some super chats lining up, 4 of them, if I'm not mistaken. Over 500 of you in the Specs chat. Let's give Specs a little love, and then we will dig into the super chats. Here's Lisa.
As a Texas family-owned business, we know you don't mess with Texas. And you won't find more ways to raise a glass of Texas-made cheer than right here. So whatever you're planning, we're ready to get you ready. Because at Specs, the fun starts here.
Righty, let's start with looks like a draft-oriented one here. Let's go with James. $5 super chat. Explain to me why 2 offensive tackles went before Banks. It's just disrespect to me. His 24 season was better than both, and he won the Lombardi and the Outland. James, I think you're preaching to the choir here. Catch, what do you think?
Kind of mystifying. I'm trying to think of examples of Texas players that didn't go as high in drafts that I just thought they should have gone, and that I'll give you one. Actually, I'll give you one. Earl Thomas and Eric Berry. I just was like, I was, and there was another safety in that draft as well. And Eric Berry was the guy. And I just remember thinking, man, that dude is not better than Earl Thomas. I'm sorry. He's not. And I've seen everything Earl Thomas has ever done. He's not better than Earl Thomas. And NFL evaluators didn't quite agree. And, you know, what happened is what happened. I don't bring that story up because it turned out that Earl Thomas, if he hadn't gone borderline, I don't know what we call that end of the career disintegration. I'll just not say anything about it in the event that Earl's watching. Shout out to Earl. but it could have been better. And if the end doesn't overshadow what he accomplished, he's a literal NFL Hall of Fame candidate. So, yeah, there's a little bit like that. Sometimes I just think they get it way wrong. And we could probably talk about it at quarterback more than anything else, right, Chad? That the most infamous draft stories are the Dan Marinos go at the end of the first round and 5 or 6 other quarterbacks go in front of him. And then, and then people will always say that we're advocates for Marino or whomever the example will be. But for me, when I think of Texas players, maybe it is the Earl Thomas example.
So in terms of Banks, James, I was really glad Banks went first. I said I thought he should be the first of the 3 to go. I'm glad he was. Also, did you catch that Mel Kiper, the extra Mel Kiper insult to Kelvin Banks out of nowhere?
Well, incorrect insult.
Exactly. He insulted him by just flat lying and saying that in 2024, you can't look at the film because he was hurt. You have to go back to the 2023 film to find a healthy Kelvin Banks.
I don't know what he was talking about. Like I don't know who he was talking about.
Yeah, I was so confused as he's going through that highlight. And as I told you, I was having dinner last night. It was my wife's birthday. We were doing a little birthday dinner, and I could see it but not hear it. So I went back later to kind of hear the breakdown and everything.
And wait, that can't be what I read.
Yeah, I was jaw dropped. And we didn't even have captions, so I couldn't even see what anybody was saying. So I get home and watch that, and I'm listening to him, and I'm like, is he saying Kelvin Banks was hurt last year? That was bizarre. So bizarre. I'm with you, James. I don't get why the Patriots wouldn't have knocked people over to get Kelvin Banks. I don't get it.
I will say this, if you're asking me how it happened, because I think there's a world if we were like, what does your dream NFL guard look like? And stylistically, what would he give you? I think Banks, from a prototype standpoint, would be right up there. Because there's a world out there where he's just a rock'em sock'em, run first mauler, and he's a good pass protector. What makes Kelvin Banks special is that he's a rock'em sock'em, could be an interior type of guy. He just happens to have fantastic pass protection abilities. He's an ace at left tackle. But in a world where his talent actually matches up more with what you would just naturally suspect of his body, then you'd be like, oh, well, he's an inside. There's some Leonard Davis component of this, but the opposite, right? They looked at Leonard Davis and tried to make him a left tackle. And for a while, it was like, well, he's just not a left tackle. But then they moved it into guard. It was like, oh, he's an all-pro. Yeah. And I think there's a little bit of they're thinking that with Kelvin Banks, that he's not actually a guard or a tackle, that he's a guard. And look, the Cowboys took a guard last night at 12. And what was the real knock on that pick? Whoa, are you really getting good value even if that guy makes a Pro Bowl, are you getting good value of taking a guard at 12?
Right. Did you reach? That was the thing for them. That it wasn't that he's a bad player. It's did the Cowboys reach to get him at 12? Could
you have just traded back 10 spots?
Yeah.
Pick something up. And even if you don't get him, then at least you're hitting the value correctly. And, and if you think Banks is ultimately going to be what Leonard Davis was, which is a guy that's best inside, then the argument would be where they took him at 9 is probably too high. But clearly the Saints, like us, believe that he's going to be a fantastic left tackle.
Yeah.
Because look, and I'll be honest, it's the thing I thought about Banks, though, coming out of high school. I guess I can't ignore that. I thought Banks was a 5-star prospect, but I wasn't convinced that he was a tackle. And the thing that I thought as a prospect was that he might be a tackle in college. I thought he might be Justin Blaylock. That he'll be a team's best offensive lineman. So he'll play tackle somewhere,
but guard in the NFL.
But guard in the NFL.
Yeah.
And in the end, I end up watching him so closely that I just don't believe what I believed then. It's, so there's some things about Quinn Ewers that I thought at the time when he was in high school that I still think are true today. I don't believe the thing that I thought when he was 17, 18 years old, but some of the criticisms that would knock him are, and look, because here's the odd thing, man, when I look at Will Campbell, that dude better work out at left tackle, because where the hell else is he going to play? Like, I don't look at that guy and think, put him inside and let him maul on some people. I mean, he looks like a guy that better be freaking special, because there's nothing about him athletically that I think is impressive. And you look at Kelvin Banks and you're like, damn, that's how I want my offensive lineman to look.
Yeah. James, thank you for the $5 super chat. That's a good start on this group of them. Let's keep hammering through. It's also James, $5. Also, Kiper having the balls to say Banks didn't have a good year in 2024. Yeah, James, I don't understand it. Somebody else mentioned it.
Kiper had
I'll throw this one in too. Kadrill, did you catch when Mel Kiper said Banks and the Outland and Trophy winner had a bad year? But it wasn't just bad year. That wasn't the thing. Like,
no. Let me, Chad, this needs to be said.
All right, go ahead.
Remember the first time you watched Game Day and Corso had a moment that made you think, oh, is it time? I think last night was the first time I've ever watched Mel have a performance. This wasn't about Banks. That's the thing. He didn't mess up about Banks. Kiper, man, you got to consider that 2 minutes, I think right before the pick of Cam Ward as the number 1 pick in the draft, Kiper was on his soapbox telling the world how wrong Tennessee was, because he needed to take a guy that ended up not getting drafted in the first round.
Wow. He was stumping for Sanders before the Ward pick?
As it was happening, Chad.
Wow. See, I missed that audio. I saw it happen, but I didn't realize that was going on.
So it was like, instead of giving Cam Ward his flowers, as it was happening, which is what we do, which is what we see what ESPN do with every pick.
Yeah, make the best of each pick. Yeah.
Mel huffed and puffed and blew the house down about Shedeur Sanders.
Damn, okay.
And then he spent the rest of the draft talking about Sanders so often in such a way that the joke became that he was on Deion's payroll.
Right. I do think it was a bit of an It was one of those nights. Yeah, it was an night for Mel. Say what you will about Mel disagreeing or agreeing with his takes over the years. I've never had that feeling. I had that feeling. So,
But then you mix that in with the Banks. There were numerous moments last night where I thought, for the first time I've ever heard Mel Kiper in that environment sound like a guy. I used to know this guy. I'm not going to dime the guy's name out because everybody would be like, oh, Ketch is starting some stuff. But I used to work with this guy who was in the industry. And he was like one of the best in the industry. But then, as I've experienced, sometimes you get in a management position, you take on more stuff, and you're not in on the ground floor like you used to be. And he would call me up before he would do media responsibilities, and he would say, hey, if I get asked about this, like, what should I say? I'm going to fill it all in. Then I would listen to said interview, and then I could hear, he doesn't sound like an expert. He now looks like somebody who's reading something. I've always thought that Mel Kiper, what has been always so impressive about Kiper, Chad, is they get to day 3 and they're talking about some obscure guy from BFE. And Kiper always has had that on lockdown in such a way that you're like, this guy's a freaking animal, man. Like he knows everything.
Right. He's breaking down safeties from South Dakota State on day 3. And you're like, whoa, okay.
This is the first time I've ever felt like Mel is slipping, and it happened from beginning to end. It was the entire first round.
Yeah.
And by the time it was over, I was like, I don't know that I need to hear Mel. And there are some Mel Kiper haters, Chad. I dig Mel. I watched ESPN last night to listen to Mel.
Mm-hmm.
It really was. His performance was so out of whack that I found myself really thinking a lot about, why am I even watching this? And I was like, I guess I'm loyal to Mel, whether it's subconscious or not, that push to make a decision of, do I go to ABC? Do I go to the NFL Network? Do I go to ESPN? I stayed where Mel was because I thought, well, I don't want to watch anything that doesn't have Mel on it. So I just stayed on ESPN. But Mel had a rough night. And, look, they kept Lee Corso on for a long time after the first time. I thought to myself, oh, maybe Lee's not in peak form anymore, and maybe there should be a conversation. They kept him on forever after that. So it might be that Kiper will be on until the day he's gone in 2080, but FYI, we're there.
Yeah, we'll see what these next couple nights look like with next, I guess, tonight and then tomorrow.
Can he save it?
What does it look like? I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure because, again, first round is the elite of the elite guys, and it was just weird. It just felt, in the case of Banks, he may have just mixed him up with somebody else. Like,
well, that's the thing. I don't know, though. Like, there's not like, oh, he was talking about anybody else. That's what I kept waiting for later on during the round.
Right.
Yeah. I was like, who's going to get drafted that fits the profile that Mel confused him with? And I have no idea. I don't
either. I do not know. All right. Let's see. Let's roll through these super chats. Let's go big money first. $9.99 is the biggest one I see. Dirkley, thank you for $9.99. Trey Owens will be the next Mac Jones for Sark. It's an interesting statement.
Okay, maybe. I will say this, though, Dirkley. There's been some KJ Lacey talk this spring. I will say that. I think that is and I'm a guy that's kind of doubted KJ Lacey a little bit, but had some buzz this spring. I think there's a thought. I just saw something that's funny that I'll address here in a second. Trey Owens. I don't know what I think about that, Dirkley. It's not impossible, but
is Trey Owens still going to be around in 2027? That's when it would have to be, right?
I don't know. And even then, he'd have to wait that long and then be the best. Is he better than Diabell? Is he
right?
Is he going to hold off KJ Lacey? I don't know.
Because Mac Jones, I mean, that was a
although last night I heard some begging for Arch Manning to go into next year's draft. That it's like, I know the Cleveland Browns would love it if Arch Manning would just go ahead and get in. And I thought, well, how do you guarantee that you can get Arch? What are you doing? I don't know what that was.
This morning, Catch, on an ESPN show, I heard our guy Matt Berry actually use the phrase "March for Arch" to describe what a team might be doing next year. And I thought, oh, okay, Matt, I see you. I don't know that you're right about that. But.
So for the rest of the year or 2 years, however it goes, March for Arch, that's well done, former king of the drive.
As always, Matt Berry nailed it.
So real quick, I got to put this up. Jay.
Okay.
God's honest truth. No, that is not who I was talking about. Scouts honor. And yes, they threw me out of the Boy Scouts, but I would argue that I did the most Boy Scout thing ever in doing the thing that got me thrown out of the Boy Scouts. And so I take the honor code still very seriously.
Yeah.
No, it was not. Totally different. No, it just wasn't. So
Catch, 1 year, my wife and I did an anniversary trip to Vegas. We didn't have enough money to see David Copperfield. We saw Harry Gamble.
I might have just come out and said it, but no, it wasn't.
But we saw the Harry Gamilton show. The magic show is incredible in Vegas. Harry Gamilton, one of my favorites. All right, we'll clean up a bunch of $5 versions
I had
here.
Mark Hamilton in my head, actually.
Mark Hamilton, yeah. Cody, $5. Chad, how many sheep did A&M give you for being magna cum laude? Yeah, if it was only that easy, Cody.
Cody, the answer is obvious, Chad. 12.
Whoop. 12. 12 is the answer. Unfortunately, though, you do have to pay for them, so it's not free. It's a whole thing. It's a deal with the student association. But thank you very much for the super chat. Here's a little 199er slipped in from Barb's 10. But caca sniff out. That's a dad joke. Yep, there you go, Barb's 10. Very well done. Well done.
By the way, Barb's 10 last night dropped in a $101 super chat. I don't know if you saw that, Chad, but
nice job, Barb's.
Barb's was like, hey, Tom, how you like them apples?
$5 super chat from James. Eric Berry getting the Thorpe over Thomas in 09 was also some shit. Yeah.
I think Earl Thomas in 2009 is the best year of football from a defensive back I've ever seen at the collegiate level. It was, and you go back and look at his numbers, they're absurd. Absolutely absurd. You know, there were games I can't remember if it was I can't remember which game it was, but he has the big punt return where Texas is just lethargic one night and takes one back to the house. He just was unbelievably good. So good that when he does have an NFL level, I mean, think about who he was at his peak in the NFL. One of the top 5 to 10 players in the NFL, regardless of position. He was that good. And that's who he was in 2009. It was literally, we were watching a first-team All-Pro, possible Hall of Fame player starting to reach his peak. And he is the bar for me. And you know what I was saying covering Texas football? They got a few guys at the position that I kind of think about that I'm okay with using across the sport. Vince Young at quarterback, he's the bar. Earl Thomas at safety for me is the bar. Derek Johnson is pretty damn close to being the bar.
Sounds about right.
And if it comes down to my own eyes, Ricky Williams is the bar. Although, weirdly enough, there are older Longhorn observers that will say, no, catch, Earl Campbell is the bar.
Yeah. What about Casey Hampton?
No.
Is he a bar kind of guy for you?
At Texas, he is, but I'm talking about as the all-time bar.
Okay.
Like in college football, when I think of the best college football players I've ever seen, and I will say the one thing with Ricky is that I didn't really see Barry Sanders in person, but I saw Barry, and like Barry was so sick, and then Barry became what Barry became. And if somebody else wanted to say, hey man, I see you're Ricky, but what about Barry? I am okay with that.
Mm-hmm. James, thank you for that. Little Earl Thomas love. How about this one from Jay? $5. I don't watch much NFL, but the times I watched Bijan, I thought their issue was O-line. They took 2 defensive guys last night. Is that their needs? Jay, I do know that at least part of the talk around Atlanta is they have got to figure out pass rush. So yes, it was part of their needs. I'm not saying you're wrong about O-line. They needed some pass rush. Badly.
And I think if I remember, the dude they took in the first round might end up being the best player in the draft when it's all said and done.
He's damn good.
I mean, we saw that dude. He's good.
Yeah.
I mean, literally when I saw, they're going to take Jalen Walker, I was like, oh, they're going to run the freaking card up to the table. And that had to be cool for Georgia and Atlanta. Like, Falcon, it was perfect. It's what they needed.
That's badass. Plus, Catch, it's good news for you and me because that's one Georgia guy that's not going to the Eagles.
Amen to that.
Hallelujah.
But, we've been there where there's an occasional loss. It happened last night. I was like, here it is, Matthew Golden, baby. Run that pick up. Or I was Tyler Warren. I was cool with that. I really was. I was like, you can talk me into, because I think Ferguson's their guy right now. And
yeah,
I think he's got 1 year left on his deal.
Especially with the Bears doing what they did, Catch. It would have been a shrewd move on the Cowboys' part to say, wait a minute, you didn't take the best of the two tight ends. We're going to do it.
Man, if they show up at the presser afterwards and they say some crazy shit like we had Warren ranked as our number 1 player in the draft, nobody would have actually thought they were completely crazy.
No.
They'd have been like, we don't know if we believe you. But he was legitimately talked about as a top 5 guy at some point. I literally saw someone's mock draft yesterday that had him going number 5.
Right. Plus, you wouldn't have had to guess. Jerry would have shown you the paper. I mean, Jerry would show you the card. We know that.
There would have been an accidental, the Cowboys board shows up on Twitter. How'd that happen?
Yeah.
I don't know. It came from Charlotte Jones's Twitter account. It's a mystery.
Exactly. Jay, thank you for the $5 super chat.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Uh-huh.
All right. So I mentioned Vince at quarterback, Ricky at running back, Derek Johnson at linebacker, Earl Thomas at safety. Rank, because you've seen them, rank them in order of positional dominance.
Okay. In positional dominance, this is in college football.
Yes.
And how dominant they were.
Yes.
Hang on. Let me make sure. You said Vince, Ricky, Earl Thomas,
and DJ.
And Derek Johnson.
Look, if you think Casey Hampton belongs in front of any of them, you can mix him in too. I didn't include him, but you brought him up, so I will at least allow him to be an answer in the event that you have Casey real high. And Casey Hampton obviously is a guy that was a heart of some great Steeler teams as a pro, and I think one day we'll get into the NFL Hall of Fame through the Veterans Committee.
I hope so. I hope you're right about that. Well, I'll throw Casey Hampton in if you'll let me. Okay, so I'm going to go with.
I'm really interested in now how you answer this. And by the way, I want to see if I'm asking Chad, you guys are more than willing, or like I'll look at your answers. And thank you, James. It was the pick 6 against Colorado. I kind of remember exactly where I was, and he ran right by me. But thank you. Hey,
yeah,
Anwar with some breaking news.
Yeah, I saw that. I marked that. Yeah, Anwar's throwing some business out there.
Congratulations, Sonny.
Sonny from the Orange Bloods crew got engaged. Well done to what I've not committed Mr. Sonny's name to memory. What's my man's name? I can't think of it. Let's not put all their business out there.
Anyway,
congratulations.
I will say this. They're always happy. They take the cutest couple photos. I think they're in Chicago this week.
Yeah.
And
congratulations, he asked in Chi-Town. Good for him.
Congratulations. It's funny because I was joking with her earlier this week about how Chicago in April is just not quite Chicago in June or July. That it's still jacket weather this week in Chicago.
Still
as opposed to literally in a month from now, it might be the best place in America to be.
Yeah. Did you see all those people in Lambeau last night? It was cold, right? It wasn't summer. It wasn't summer in the Midwest yet.
But when it gets to when I'm telling you, if you've been to Chicago in the summer, it is the best place in America. It really is. It's fantastic.
That's fair. That's fair.
Congratulations, Sonny. Awesome. Absolutely.
Congrats, Sonny, and congrats to Anwar for throwing.
I was waiting for that to happen, by the way.
Yeah. It is.
because I dated I dated Heather for a few years, and I got way past the point of people were like, well, when are you going to ask the question?
Like, come on, man.
Like I had one of my best friends had that a little bit. There was just a little bit of like, I want to die. I was at a point where I was like, that's going to happen, I bet. And it did. So congratulations.
Yeah, you can't get past a certain point unless you're one of those like hippie couples that always tells everybody they're not getting married. Then you're okay.
Well, I've known Sonny now for like almost a little more than a year. And like inside of that year, you meet a person and the person they're with, and you go, oh, they're going to get married. And they did. That's all I'm saying is that meeting them within a year, it was very evident to me that they kind of belong together and will get married. And they did. Congratulations. I'm really happy for them.
Sonny, if you're watching for the next 20 minutes, we're going to break down your relationship.
No, I'm done. That's what I needed to say. Congratulations.
It's not what we're going to do. Congratulations to both of you. Congratulations. All right.
It's a buy or sell question now.
That's right. One more super chat. $4.99 on a scale of 1 to caca yourself. I enjoy that. How shocked would you be if Quinn got picked up in the late second round? A 3?
Yeah, like a 4 or 3. I don't know. I'm not expecting it, but I won't be shocked.
Yeah, I agree. That's pretty much where I would be, in the lower part of your scale there, Oscar, which I like that scale. Make sure you bring that scale back to the show at some point.
Oscar, I don't have any. Let's talk about expectations real quick for tonight with Quinn. I think he's going tonight, but I don't know. That's my expectation. So if he goes, I will wherever he will go, I will think, well, I thought that would happen tonight. Now, look, if he goes 40, it'll be way earlier than I thought, and maybe this really worked out for Quinn. We all should shut our mouths. If it's 98, I don't know. We'll need to see the team, the situation, and we may say things like on Monday, should he have come back and done a year in the portal? And, I asked Anwar that question last night, and he said, man, I think Quinn was just kind of like F college. I'm good. I'm ready to go be a pro. I'm ready to go be an NFL player. And to that, I get, hey, man, like who doesn't get, I'm just kind of done with college. I got to that point, honestly. Like I had to make a decision myself. And I chose work instead of finishing my degree. And I think Cam Williams might be a guy that's like that. There was already kind of some second guessing that Cam Williams isn't going to go as high as maybe he thought he was going to go when he declared. But I do think with him, it was almost the moment he was playing well enough that someone started to ask the question, hey, are we going to ask whether or not Cam Williams is coming back next year? The kind of thing that we're starting to do with Trevor Goosby right now. The very first time that question got asked, the feedback I got back very quickly was, oh yeah, no, he'll go pro. I just think he was ready to go pro. I think mentally that's where he wanted to be. And so, assuming he doesn't go to the 6th or 7th round, assuming he stays in the top 4 rounds, I think he'll be okay. I think he'll be fine. I think he'll be ready to go get some work done. I don't think he'll look back. I just think he was ready to not be a college football player and be a college student anymore.
Catch Learned Hat has an answer to your question here. Learned Hat is going VY, DJ, Thomas, Hampton might be higher, hard to see his type of dominance, and then Ricky. Wow.
You didn't even give me yours, Chad. Leave that up.
No, I did not.
Leave that up and give it to me.
Yeah, Learned Hat, interestingly enough, your 5 is my 1. I'm going Ricky, Vince, and since I brought him into the discussion, I got to lean in on Hampton. So I'm going to go Casey, then Earl, and then DJ. That would be my list.
Wait, so you're going Ricky 1.
Correct.
Ricky Williams is the best college football player you've ever seen?
I don't believe that was the.
I'm asking. It's unrelated to this.
Yeah, you're talking about at the position.
I know. I'm wondering what other player at another position trumps Ricky, I guess.
Yeah, but again, that's not about other positions, is it? You're saying at the position, at running back.
Yes.
So it's a
But
dog
you
show.
can see how I would wonder.
Right, but this is a dog show discussion I think you're presenting here, right? Is Ricky a better running back than Vince was a quarterback?
Yeah.
Isn't that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. Ricky, Vince,
Okay.
Hampton, Thomas, Derek Johnson. Ricky Williams is about as good a college when you just if you have a
I
machine
agree.
make a college running
I
back,
freaking love Ricky.
it makes Ricky Williams, and he was spectacular to me. So yes, I would put him at 1.
I've never seen another Ricky Williams. There's never been another running back that's made me think that guy's Ricky Williams.
Yeah, that's a good way. Yeah, that's a good way to say it.
I saw last night when Ashton Genty went off the board. Louis Riddick, who, by the way, was batshit crazy last night himself. At one point, I can forgive Mel Kiper for everything. Louis Riddick. In talking about Shedeur Sanders, said the words, what if he has a Tom Brady type career?
Damn. No pressure, kid.
That came out of his mouth, Chad.
No pressure, kid.
I'm glad I was not driving a car. I was at that moment when I was, you ever sometimes ask yourself, it's kind of bullshit that they don't let us put TV screens in the front of the car. Oh, it's dangerous. You ever do that? Every once in a while, you're like, you know what? I'm not even going to watch the game, but I just would like to have it on. Let me have a 20 inch screen. I started thinking about like all of a sudden Tom's business has grown. Now he's putting systems of TVs in cars. Let me have my 20 inch, right? But then I literally heard him say that last night. And if I had been driving, I would have swerved into an embankment.
You would have died in a car crash.
Who are
doubt about it.
Wait, who did he say and who are we talking? He's Tom Brady. And then it's like, wait a minute. He's talking about Andrew Luck back in the draft. What are we doing? What's happening? Shedeur Sanders, what?
Yeah. Okay. So before I get your list, Learned Hat says I put Ricky low because of the other running backs that have been dominant as well. Maybe I misunderstood the task.
I think you got it.
Teddy, we also we also see your $20 super chat. Real quick, Catch. How would you orient the 5? If you will indulge me and put Casey Hampton in the discussion.
I'm going to go VY Ricky.
Okay.
Earl.
Okay.
Casey and DJ.
Gotcha. All right. There you go. I think the VY Ricky at the top is going to be a lot of people's thoughts. Although it's funny, Ricky's been down on multiple people's lists now. Teddy with a 1999 says Vince Young, Derek Johnson, Earl Thomas, Casey, Ricky. Catch, how do you think how good do you think Sergio Kindle would have been in the NFL had the accident not happened?
It's a hard question to answer, Teddy, because, and I do want to just go over your list here in a second, but I'm going to answer the question. Mm-hmm. The accident not happening doesn't mean that Sergio grows up in a fashion that would allow him to have the optimal career possible.
Yeah, that's a fair answer.
The optimal career for Sergio Kindle was all-pro player at his position, capable of, if sustaining it long enough, being a Hall of Fame player. At his peak, sustained for a 5 to 10 year window. That's, we're not maybe having a Von Miller type conversation about him, but boy, he's in a neighboring zip code. If what you're asking really takes place because we take the accident away. But I think that Sergio, even today, would probably confess that the accident was a byproduct of some maturity issues that just didn't exist at that time, that something needed to happen to cause that to change. And I just don't know that taking that specific accident away doesn't mean that we don't have another accident at some other point. And it's sad to say that, but in the spirit of your question, he could have been phenomenal.
Yep. All right. So Teddy goes Vince, Derek, Earl, Casey, Ricky Williams. Interesting that a couple people that put Ricky at the 5th spot. I mean, these are all just badasses. I get it, but man, Ricky Williams as a college running back.
I would have loved to have seen Earl play in person. One of the things about watching Ricky, Chad, is I saw 20 plus games with my eyeballs standing on the sidelines.
Yeah.
You know, when he breaks the record against Texas A&M, I'm standing in that end zone and he's running.
Right, I remember you said that.
I'm under the goalpost, but I'm able to watch that whole thing unfold field level in a way that like you just can't from the stands. There's a reason why when photogs shoot from the field, it looks different than when they shoot from, you know, the skyboxes. And I watched Casey Hampton too at that time in person on the same field. And I can only tell you that in real time, that was Sean Rogers almost felt like a He-Man superhero peer for Casey Hampton. If you go back and look at Sean Rogers' numbers, they were ridiculous as well.
Oh, yeah.
And if he stays healthy, he might even have better numbers than Casey Hampton. And so I don't know. Like, I'll be honest, in the conversation of Hampton and Ricky, in real time, Ricky Williams was Superman. I watched Ricky Williams and thought nobody else on the field was a grown man the way that Ricky Williams was a grown man. I watched him get the ball 40 plus times, and it never felt like he got tired, and he just obliterated teams. Defenders just were out. I can remember being at the Cotton Bowl against Mississippi State in person, and as they're going to halftime, watching Mississippi State players walk off the field, and you could just see it on their faces. This is some bullshit. I'm good. We don't need 30 more minutes of this. And then by the time you get to the fourth quarter, just stop, uncle. It's Rocky Balboa. Throw the towel. And you know, outside of Vince, I've never seen anybody else do that. And I think, you know, there might be an Auburn fan that says that Cam Newton is that guy, and there might be a Nebraska fan that says that Tommy Frazier is that guy. And we're in rarefied air where some confirmation bias kicks in. There's no getting around the fact that I saw Ricky play some unbelievable teams and other players with my own eyes, and he looked like a Greek god. So I don't know. Like I can't have Ricky at the end and Casey in front of him. And as good as I think Earl Thomas is, I don't know that I ever thought he was a football playing god. The two guys that I think that about are Vince Young and Ricky Williams, and everybody else is definitely a tier below that.
Yeah.
For me.
I would agree with you there. Teddy, thank you for the super chat. Let's grab these others real quick. Football Junkie with a $4.99. Over under 3 first-round picks next draft. I'll take the over, Football Junkie. Got to set the standard. You got to make that the bar now. I'll take the over. Make it, I'll tell you what, certainly if you make it 2 and a hook, make it 2 and a hook, and I'll definitely take the over.
I will too. If you give me 2 and a hook, I'll take the over. Because Goosby's going, and he's going to be a top 10 pick. Anthony Hill's going to go, and he's going to be a first-round pick. And then it's about, does anybody else in the program develop in a way? I mean, Arch, dude, I gotta be honest with you. I have heard, sourcing close to Arch, with access to Arch, with knowledge to Arch, really lean heavily into We don't really care what anybody thinks. We believe that before Arch is ready to go to the NFL, that he needs 2 seasons worth of starts, and that if he doesn't do that, you actually impact his NFL career in a way that's damaging enough that we don't even want to test that, right? I've heard that conveyed in a way that when Arch is talked about, I always talk about Arch. Chad, you do a show with me. When we talk about Jack injuries, I'm like, they got a guy that will play with Arch for 2 more years. I think of Arch as a 2 more year guy.
Yep, me too.
But it's hard not to watch the draft last night and them talk about a guy. It's almost like pick anybody, that it becomes almost like a running joke about whether they're going to enter the draft or not. And like local people will say, no.
Hey, look.
He wants to get his degree.
I give all credit to Matt Berry for saying March for Arch, but I would remind Matt Berry, some of those marches take 2 years. Sometimes you're trying to march up mountains and down the other side.
Didn't just run for a year. He ran for a couple of years.
He ran for a long time. It takes a while, Matt. It takes a while. That's all I'm saying.
But all I'm saying is when you hear stuff like that, you think, what if the Saints have the number 1 pick in the draft? Or what if like he and the Manning family get together at the Manning camp or over Memorial Day weekend or something like that? They're shooting fireworks on the 4th. And what if Peyton goes, hey, Arch, Granddad over here wasn't going to let Eli play in San Diego. Was a non-starter. I'm just curious. Where do you and Coop say that there's nowhere you'll go?
Lord.
And what's the dream destination spot that, maybe I need to let a Hall of Fame quarterback connected to the team know, or whatever, just in the event that we want extra leverage in December, January, whenever, because we're about making millions in this family.
You know what? I'm going to try to help all the Texas fans out, Kat. The answer is Austin, Texas next year. That's his answer.
No, he's talking to his unc. Right.
He's talking to his unc, and he says, hey,
Unc is not going to let him give that BS answer.
Yes, he will.
He's going to say, no, then he's going to say, what's number 2? Who do you dream? What do you put your head on a pillow in 2025 and think that's where I want to be? Because you might have a chance to be there. Like, don't pretend like you don't think that. Yeah. All I'm saying is when you hear the talk last night,
he'll say Saints in 2 years.
Okay, well, if for some reason the Saints had the number 1 pick in the draft next year, he may very well probably stay. Maybe it makes a 99-1 decision, a 95-5 decision, but it's still a pretty big change. And I'm just, you hear it last night, and it just dawned on me, Chad. It was like, damn, there is, I guess, a world where this is his only season. There is. We may think it is a slim chance alternative universe, and we don't live in it. If he comes out next year, he's the number 1 pick in the draft, though, unless he's awful this year.
Yeah, the discussion will be out there, but we also know that
the talking about teams tanking for him.
Exactly, but the Mannings are different, Catch. The Mannings are different. We know that.
I know that, but
they're a different breed.
They didn't do that for Eli.
Why are
and
you
they really trouble? Didn't do that for Peyton either.
No one sent a chat today that said Catch caused trouble. Yet this is what you're doing.
No,
this is where you're going.
Isn't causing trouble. I'm not looking at the chat. Am I causing trouble?
No, I'm just saying you're throwing this thing out there. If I'm a Texas fan, I don't want to hear this kind of talk.
I don't care.
Well, that's fair.
I mean, I just said I think he stays. And I explained all of the context in the world I possibly could.
Oh yeah, no, and I'm with you. I think it is, and it'll be wild to watch those two things going on at the same time. Because as soon as I heard Matt Berry say "March for Arch," I thought, "Oh yeah, that's going to be a narrative."
My God, that's so catchy.
As the season goes on, because I keep asking the one big question, Catch, for the very beginning of the season. Imagine what kind of craziness are we going to see if they beat Ohio State?
Yeah,
if they beat Ohio State and they've got that pimp walk of a schedule up to the game at the Swamp. Holy mackerel.
We keep talking about it, and I still don't think Texas fans understand. If Arch blows up, they've never had a bigger star ever in any sport ever. Vince Young won't be as big as Arch.
No.
If Arch beats Ohio State in Columbus and is what the quarterback version in a way of what Reggie Bush was. But if Reggie Bush's last name was Manning, you know what I mean? Like there's a point where you're a rock star and everything you do goes under the microscope. And that is, there have been very few of those guys. That's not what Vince Young was.
And
Vince
then
Young was
and think about it,
star to John and Paul when you think about the USC guys that year.
If that happens at the same time, if you've got an NFL team, and to your example, let's say it's the Saints. Let's say the Saints are 0-3, 0-4. If they have a bad start.
I hadn't even considered this, but yeah.
Right. And if Texas is on a parade route through September after beating the Buckeyes, oh my God. Like that March for Arch thing is gonna
will leave First Take.
It will be everywhere. It'll be everywhere.
Look, and did the Saints take a quarterback last night?
They did not. They took the guy they want to protect their quarterbacks for the next decade.
Let's see what happens tonight.
Yeah.
Because, and look, it doesn't even necessarily have to be about Arch. Next year's quarterback, there are guys that I actually think suck. I don't think Drew Aller is good. But there are NFL people that think that dude's going to be a baller, that he's very talented, and that I am way wrong. Way wrong. And he might be the 5th, 6th, 7th best quarterback in next year's draft. And so I do think that there are teams that aren't taking a quarterback this year that holistically are looking at their long-term future. And I think they're thinking, if I'm in a position next year to be able to take a quarterback, do I want anything to keep me? Is there anybody really here other than maybe Cam Ward that I even want to think twice about? Is it an inconvenience to draft a guy in the first round at 22? And the answer with Jackson Dart turned out they did think this. Give us some Jackson Dart. And next year, if we're in the top 5, we'll be the team taking the best player in the draft. That's not a quarterback because we got our guy. But even if you take him at 24, you might still take that guy if he's there. If you end up with the first pick in the draft and Arch is in the draft and you think he's that guy, sorry, Jackson Dart. I mean, we have seen this happen. But next year's quarterback draft is going to be really good. And it's kind of the opposite of this year's draft. It was a little more like last year's draft. And I think some of these teams are like, maybe in the second round, but not in the first, because we're all right if next year we're in the quarterback market in a quarterback-rich draft.
All right, we got some more super chats to clean off. First, a couple from our guy Wes jumping in. Wes with $10. You guys missed my earlier super, so I come back to you with this. Riddick also compared Genty to Emmitt Smith.
No, that's what I was saying.
That's where I thought you were going, Catch. I thought you were going to talk about Genty and Emmitt Smith.
Did I not finish the thought?
You never mentioned Emmitt's name. That's the part of it where I was like, wait, what did he just?
No. Like, that's the other thing. Yes. He did compare Ashton Genty to Emmitt Smith, where I meant to mention that, whereas I said, I've never seen anybody compared to Ricky. I've never seen anybody in thought that guy reminds me of Ricky Williams. And then I thought to myself as I was saying that even Emmitt Smith last night had a guy that was compared to him in the draft.
Yeah.
And as much as I don't see that at all, but I mean, Riddick also said, what if Shedeur Sanders has a Tom Brady type career? And he mentioned another quarterback too that was a Hall of Famer. But we said Tom Brady. That's all I heard.
Yeah.
Like, I know he said somebody else's name that I should remember. Maybe like Patrick Mahomes. I don't know. I don't know what he said.
He may have said Mahomes. Yeah, I was going to, or he either said Mahomes or Rodgers. It was somebody that has a Super Bowl or a handful, but then he went right to Brady. It's like, whoa.
Brady?
Whoa. Hold on. By the way, Wes, I did find your other super chat. $5 from early in the show. The thumbnail is sick. Have a good day, fellas. Thank you, Wes. Appreciate
What's the thumbnail? I know what we talked about. What did he do? I got to go find it.
Yeah, when you go look up the thumbnail. Shout out to the graphics department. They did a great job. They may have had a little inspiration from a handsome man that likes Marvel movies. But thank you, Wes. Appreciate that. We went with a Deadpool Wolverine Portal reference today.
Okay, I see it
on the thumbnail. So that was the idea that I kind of threw at Tyler to say. I said, hey man, your choice, whatever you want. But then I thought of, wait a minute, the last second portal closing, door closing, like that was the image in my mind, and he did a good job of finding that one. So.
I was thinking, like I know what you did last summer, kind of like creepy, shadowy, the doors shutting, but there's like a scary shadow figure with a knife kind of in the light. You know what I mean? That's what I was thinking.
I got you. Okay. You were going a little spookier. You wanted a little darker.
I was, by the way, I was just the 50th person to hit the thumbs up button on the YouTube video. So now it's weird because now there really is a lot. I got to get us off of the channel because I see 4 of us now and we're all in red and it's a little weird. By the way, I'm just I'm done. I just do have to brag, baby.
Yes.
Championship Sunday.
They get it done?
I might be unbearable on Monday.
Okay, so the championship's not locked up yet, but it's on the way.
They have 5 games left.
Okay.
Essentially, they have to lose all. They've lost 2 games all year. They have to lose all 5 remaining games.
They need 1 point.
They're like 99.999 with the computer models. I mean, they need 1 point.
Okay.
And they can lose all 5 games, and then they need Arsenal, who haven't won 5 games all year in a row.
Okay.
To win, I guess at this point, their last 4 because they played the other night, one of the 5. So, and they didn't win it. So they now have to win their final 4 in a row, which I don't know if they've done that either. So, yeah, like it seems like a formality. It's at home. We don't have to win. I'm ready to party like it's 1999. Look, I'm a Cowboys fan. I am a Phillies fan. I mean, it's not the worst existence in the world, but I'll be honest, most of the last decade following the death of Roy Halladay wasn't awesome. Like the end of that great Phillies team in the 2000s actually killed my baseball spirit for a while. Like, you got to remember, I love Ryan Howard, and his career pretty much ended in the worst way anybody's career may have ever ended. In the deciding swing of a disappointing series where you tear your Achilles tendon. And so, and that wasn't even the saddest thing that happened during all of that. And Chad was with me the day that we learned about Ryan Howard's big contract. And he was there the day that Dustin was like, that's dangerous. Memories. Yeah, I'm done. Yeah, I ran out of steam.
That was so weird.
And then I'm a Sixers fan. I hadn't seen a championship since I was 7.
I don't think I have ever seen anyone celebrate something and then stab themselves in the stomach.
No, so I'm setting the stakes of like, man,
repeatedly.
I really have Liverpool has become my baby. They're my wife. They have replaced the Cowboys as my wife, and the Cowboys have become I don't know what the Cowboys are, but they are an ex-girlfriend that for whatever reason I do stupid shit around when I see them. And I can't tell my wife that I see that person ever.
It's like you're toasting your new wife at your wedding, and you're doing it by ripping on all your former girlfriends. Like, that's the path you're taking here. Like,
you know how much I love her? Because let me tell you how much I hate everybody else.
she ain't Susie. That's why. What? What happened? Can't we just celebrate Liverpool?
No, but like, you know, when I say I'm happy and I'm going to enjoy this, I don't live in a life where like the teams that I love, you know, I'm not a Yankees fan really. Like I'm a Cowboys fan, and I had that sweet spot. Luckily, when I did,
Right.
but I'm almost 50 now, and there is nothing else that's ever remotely come to that. And as a Liverpool fan, we've been historically close several times, only to lose to arguably the best team in the history of the Premier League, who's always like 1 point better than you. So to be in a position where, and then the 1 year that we win it, that I've been a fan, they win it in COVID, and then people try to act like, oh, it wasn't a real championship. And I didn't let y'all see that double shotgun salute. I think I kept that hidden. But it was there in spirit. So yeah, man, I'm going to enjoy this. This is nice. It's nice. Damn it, it's nice.
A lot of feelings. Also, 2 super chats still to get to, and this one's going to open a door. We're already cooking up a 2-hour show. Let's see what happens now. $4.99.
Oh God, it's 136.
$4.99 super chat from Blake. Catch, your late 90s recruiting stories are gold. Ooh, hang on, everybody. Any good behind the scenes stuff on Sims and the recruitment? How pissed was Major? LOL. Damn, Blake.
I mean, I've got a bunch of Sims stuff because there was just a lot of grapevine talk about Sims. I can remember, I think it was New Year's Day. Texas is getting ready to play Mississippi. I can't remember when it was. It was the day of something football related. And I just remember getting a phone call back. For whatever reason, it feels like New Year's Day. And it was like, so kind of like a defiant, it's happening. Chris Sims is going to flip. I remember who I was talking to. But maybe the story that I remember the most about his recruitment was it had become such a bad secret that when Rod Babers, and Rod remembers this too, it's funny. When Rod Babers made his high school announcement, Rod and myself and a couple of other people, including the before mentioned Harry
Gamilton.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Harry was there that day. We're there talking to Rod, and Tim Brewster is there.
Mm-hmm.
And we're sitting there talking to Rod about the fact that he's excited to eventually play with Chris Sims, who is going to become a Longhorn. And at that point, Tim Brewster makes like a head nod and like a, hey, come here. And he calls Rod over to him. He tells Rod, like, hey, man, so let's make sure we don't say anything about that whole Chris Sims thing to anybody in the media. Rod's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. You
bet, coach. Won't say a word. Didn't have to. Those guys told me, coach, weeks ago. So, you know, my thing about, I think there's another Sims story that I just can't share that's not for your ears, that's famous to me, but I can't share it with you. But if you ever buy like some item in a silent auction that like allows you to see me one-on-one and I make sure your phone's not recording, I'll tell you in private the story.
Yeah.
That's my sim stuff. The thing with Major, my Major story, the thing about Major is that there's a quarterback from Austin that's turned out to be fairly notable, that they took Major over. Look, Major was committed to Texas A&M. And in December, he makes the decision to flip and be a part of this Texas recruiting class who had also gotten a commitment from Greg Brown, and they were trying to get a commitment from Travis Minor. They were trying to get the threefer, okay? And so Major was going to be the quarterback in this class, and there were a lot of people that were like, what the hell are they doing? And then there were some people who were like, whoa, this is obvious. We're trying to get the threesome from the same high school. All these guys went to the same high school together. And this guy at Austin Westlake is the best high school quarterback not named Vince Young that I have ever seen with my eyeballs. I wax poetic about how good Drew Brees was in the season of 1996. I mean, I'll never see anything. I now know how I talked about Earl Thomas in college and how he translated to the NFL is how I felt about Drew Brees. I was so young, though. It was one of the first guys I'd ever seen. I didn't quite know how to say it, but I grew a little bit of infamy in my early days, Chad, in the internet. In the summer between Drew Brees' senior season at Westlake and his freshman season at Purdue, I went on the GoBig12.com message boards and I proclaimed, I believe as Cool Daddy, that Drew Brees would be a Heisman finalist before his career was over. And not only did that happen, and mind you, he had two. You got to understand how big of a claim that is. And people were like, oh, really? And I was like, really? Because I was defending how highly I had him ranked in my 1997 recruiting rankings. Not high enough, but I had him in the top 10. And he had Purdue and Kentucky, where there's only 2 scholarship offers. Well, I say all of this because I used to take weekly phone calls from Drew Brees' mom, who was irate that the Longhorns were taking Major Applewhite in the recruiting class instead of her son. And she felt like it was all about some BS politics, and that, I mean, it sounded like conspiracy theories. I'll just throw that away. People who are wildly conspiracy theory. It was a little bit like that, but she was really hurt and upset about it. And I talked to Drew a bunch when he was in high school, and he definitely would have gone to Texas, but like his mom, Mina Clark, I think, like she really, really wanted, she's pissed about it all. And so whenever I think about Major's recruitment, I think about the threefer and how they were trying to almost pulled it off. They finished number 2 in the recruitment for Travis Minor, who went to Florida State. And although was never a guy that was probably worth trying to get a threefer on, he was still really damn good. And then, I think about Major because there are alternative universes where John Malkovich, who stood on the sideline and watched Drew Brees play in person at least 3 times when Drew Brees was a senior, because his recruiting coordinator, Randy Rogers, his son played on the same team. So I personally saw John Malkovich standing on the sideline of Drew Brees's. There's a world out there where John Malkovich goes, Whoa, hey, wait a minute. That guy, the guy who's the best high school quarterback that some people say they've ever seen in person, he's actually pretty good. Maybe I shouldn't judge what I thought he looked like in June, coming off of an ACL repair that was 6 months after the injury. Breeze injured that knee in the playoffs in November, did a summer camp in June, and they decided then that Major Applewhite was ahead of Drew Brees in the pecking order. And all of this shit that John Malkovich saw in person with his own eyes led him to still take Major Applewhite over Drew Brees. Sorry. Woosaw, needed to get that out of my system.
Kind of felt like we were headed somewhere. Blake, thank you.
I didn't realize I needed therapy on that, Chad.
Thank you, Blake, for the $4.99. You definitely got.
Do you know that Drew Brees should have played quarterback at Texas? I know they always talk about the Aggie thing. She never brought up the Aggies. She was always mad about Major Applewhite.
I've heard stories like that before. Somehow I thought maybe it would end up there. All right, one other super chat we need to get in. Barb's 10 with a 5 spot. Round 1 wild moments. Baby vomits during Banks' pick. I missed that. I saw the baby. I didn't see it vomit.
Oh, you got to go see that. That's freaking hilarious.
Golden on the mic. That was a nice moment for Matthew Golden. Riddick, not so subtle conspiracy rant. Thanks for the recap show last night. Catch. Yeah, we told y'all to go check it out. Go check it out.
It's shorter than this one.
Speaking of recap shows, the Football with Friends guys. The Football with Friends guys had their recap of the full first round this morning. You can go check that out. Football with Friends this evening at 6. And remember the Monday Overreaction show with that guy right there. And I don't think Anwar on Monday, but it may just be Catch. It may be more Drew Brees stories on Monday morning. Overreaction for the
I hadn't even thought about that, but you're right.
Full draft is coming. So
I'll definitely just do that myself because I'll need that. Clearly, I've got a lot of stuff to say. Like
you really
we
do.
are creeping up on 2 hours, and I'm not even looking at the clock. Did you watch the old-fashioned, aka Football with Friends this morning?
I did not get. I saw a little bit of it. I didn't get a chance to really dig into it. I had some other things going on today, so had not had a chance.
You know what my favorite part of it was? You're not, because you didn't see it. They kind of asked the question of, so what was the most shocking thing that we saw last night? And there wasn't a natural answer. And it really summed up the draft. That whatever last night was, it doesn't have those infamous moments from the draft.
Right.
Like Shedeur Sanders doesn't get drafted. And maybe if he goes 29th, maybe, I don't know, like there's a world out there where maybe there's a real dramatic moment where that becomes the moment. But in the end, there's no team or no pick. And nobody that didn't select Sanders tonight is really being examined in a way where it's like, how dare they?
Yeah. Last night ended up being more about an absence of one guy than the presence of 32 guys.
Well, because remember when the Browns didn't take Manziel? Mm-hmm. And there were legitimate questions like they could have had Johnny Manziel. And so when they traded back up to get him, it felt like in a way, they were having their cake and eating it too and righting a potential wrong. And it really. Yeah.
And that all got done in the first round.
Yes.
So you didn't have the day holdover like we have on this one.
Yeah. So it just, it was just, there wasn't that. So anyway. All
right. So just about ready to buy or sell here. You want to go?
Yes.
First or second?
No, I don't have any prepared, so I'll just go first.
All right. Fair enough.
Buy or sell number 1. You're okay with the areas in the draft, the teams that selected all 3 of the Texas players that went in the first round last night. All good relationships. They should do well.
Let me think about all three real quick. Denver there, and then obviously we talked about the Saints, and then Golden is yeah, on the surface I'll buy. On the surface I'll buy. Yeah, I didn't have a feeling of either of the three like, oh God, that man, poor guy. Sometimes I have that where it's like, oh geez,
I asked the question.
Yeah, I don't want you to go there, but no, I mean, obviously you're talking about, young coaching situations and some things. I mean, this is Kellen Moore's first run in New Orleans, right? This is the very beginning of his career there. So it's a little tough to know some of those things, but I'll buy. I didn't have, I can't remember which it was it buy or sell? Was buy the worry or was sell the worry? Anyway, I didn't have any worries with the three guys.
Buy or sell number 2, you think Matthew Golden will be 1,000+ yard receiver with the Packers, and the pick was A+.
Well, that's putting a lot together.
Well, just start with 1,000+ yard receiver.
Yeah, but that quarterback certainly has, taken those steps. So you're getting him to add on. Yeah, I think it's a buy. It's hard to be positive when you're talking about the Green Bay Packers, but I was happy for him last night. Suit was great. Interaction with the crowd was great. Looking out at that sea of people must have been amazing. And with what we've seen from that quarterback and that team, yeah, I think they can get him to 1,000. Absolutely. Go. All right. There it is. There you go. I think Jeff Ketchum meant to hit a button and he kicked himself out of the show. I think that's what just happened. That was a two buy or sells in. I think his finger was going, he was clicking on something and he just kicked himself out of the show. Otherwise, maybe his Wi-Fi went terrible. I have no idea. What that was. There you go. I don't see any super chats right now. I'll wait for Ketch to jump back in. While I'm waiting, we will we'll remind you that you know what we need to remind you about? The baseball NIL fundraiser. It's up again at orangebloods.com. Go check it out. We've had people in the chat mentioning the baseball series that cranks up tonight, 7:00 for game 1. Both game 2 and game 3 are set for 3:00. It is on SEC Network and ESPN2 if you want to check it out on TV. If you don't have a spot at the dish to get on out there, this baseball series is going to be awesome. And apparently Ketch just did leave. I didn't realize that was going to happen. All right. I had buy or sell ready to go. I don't know. It's crazy. All right. Let me see if I can entice him back. I was going to show him this earlier, but now I'll just show you guys while we're waiting on him. Last night, I'm watching the draft, about ready to get ready to go to bed and stuff like that. It's pretty late at night. And I got a weird text late at night, but I didn't mind getting it because it was my man Travis from Hay City Store. Look what he sent me. Look at these bad boys. 2 of their legendary dishes, the chicken fried steak and the truck stop enchiladas. I mean, come on. Are you serious? Sent me that last night. I'll throw a QR code up for you there as well. Just let that soak in real quick while we're waiting for Ketch. Oh, my God. And that cream gravy, if you haven't had it, you don't know. If you've had it, you know that it is not your average cream gravy. There's a lot of cream gravy out there. A lot of it. There's the lumpy cream gravy. There's the too much pepper cream gravy. There's the not enough pepper cream gravy. This is cream gravy that I would damn near drive to Hay City Store for just that. If Travis told me, Chad, I got a bowl of the cream gravy for you and a beer, you want to come out? If I didn't have anything going on, I think I'd just drive there. Just drive. Just to have the gravy. And those enchiladas are incredible too. Hay City Store out in Driftwood. Just thought I'd give you a little bit of that before we are done. Thought I was going to show Ketch, but I'm not. So I have no idea what's happening. Hang on. Let me see if did he send me a message as to what just happened? That was one of the weirdest moments we've had in the show, right? That was odd. My answer to a buy or sell, a really benign NFL buy or sell, and then he just clicks his way out. Hang on. Let me see if I can figure out what in the hell just happened. I didn't dream that up, right? He's not. What is going on? If y'all have something you want to talk about in the chat, feel free. Hang on. Let me do a little double check here. Let me check on the chat. Make sure. Are you okay? Did you lose Wi-Fi? Coming back? Maybe? No, wait, hold on. Now my phone's messing up. This is perfect. Come on now. Coming back. My goodness. All right. So if you're just jumping in, I hate that you would have jumped in at this point. We were wrapping up. We're coming up towards a 2-hour show. Going to have buy or sell and be done. But yeah, I think Anthony might be right. I think Anthony might totally be right. That was that it? My answer was just that bad? What in the world? I'm just so confused. Yeah, I'm probably gonna have to do. Somebody says, yeah, I'll throw my buy or sell at you guys. And okay. God, my phone is so slow. I wasn't able to get the message sent to him. Okay, yeah, we'll do that. You know what? I like this idea. Hooked on the horns. Let's do it. Let's do it. All right. Apparently, Catch did start the weekend early. So I will give y'all my thoughts for buy or sell. Let's go. Buy or sell number 1. By the end of tonight, Quinn Ewers will have a home in the NFL. What do y'all think? I'm going to buy this. I'm going to be positive here. I think there's going to be a run on quarterbacks, and I think by the end of 3 rounds, somebody's going to grab Quinn. I don't think we're going to have to talk about a 4th or 5th round story with Quinn. That's just me. That is just me. My second buy or sell for Catch, if Texas only had one more portal move to make, you'd tell Sark to go O-line. As much as I'm into the nuts and bolts of it all, I'd still say if you had a badass wide receiver or another tight end you really liked, that's good. But if you don't have a sizzle, but you had an O-lineman interior that you liked, that's where I'd go. That's where I'd buy it. That's where I would buy that one. All right. I think I'm also buying this one. Buy or sell number 3, the next Longhorn off the board will be Alfred Collins. I'm rooting for 95. I'm rooting for 95 to be the guy. I'm going to go with Alfred being the first Longhorn we see go off the board tonight. Those of you that are movie fans, this is what I was going to throw at Catch because I know he's into all kinds of movies. I was going to see. He asked me if I was going to see Sinners, and I'm not. Last night, we had dinner for my wife's birthday with our friend Sherry, and I think Sherry and my wife need to go see Sinners. I don't need to go see it, but y'all might. And I think Catch would have bought that. I think he's going to go see it in the theater. And finally, I wanted to get Catch's thoughts on this because it's a classic I still haven't seen. Pacino is 85 today. I have not seen Heat. I know I need to see it, but I wanted to know if Catch thought it was in his top 5. Like for Pacino, is this a top 5 Pacino performance that I'm going to see when I finally get around to watching Heat? I hope so. All right. Now that we have crawled right up on 2 o'clock, not only is Catch not here, but I also have something I need to do at 2 o'clock. So I think that's it. I think we're done. Thank y'all for liking and subscribing and getting your notifications. Sorry for the weird ending to the show there. I'm going to check on Catch, and I hope he is all right. And I think maybe he just went with the just wrap up because something went wrong. I don't know. Hopefully Catch is all right and he's ready for Monday overreaction on Monday. Y'all have a great weekend. Enjoy the rest of the draft. We'll come back on Monday, obviously, and talk about how many Longhorns in total got taken. 11 from last year is the record. We'll see if the Longhorns can break that. Maybe all 13 that went to the combine, maybe more. We shall see. Y'all have a great weekend. Football with Friends at 6. All that good draft recap is there too. Catch and Anwar from last night recapping the Longhorns and round 1. The full round 1 recap is up with the Football with Friends guys as well. And then this wild show today. Y'all have a good weekend. We will talk to you on Monday. This is House Divided and Orange Bloods Live.